Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with a new product announcement video for these various 1/6 scale German and American AFV components. All of the components in this video here are listed on the ECA catalog and can be found on the various pages that are found in the video description. Regardless, let's go ahead and kick this video off. To start this video off, we have some German World War II AFV parts that are found here on the table. What you see here is actually a part made by request. So again, before I go into it, if anyone is just watching this video or is on the ECA catalog and are curious if they see something or they want something that isn't listed, don't be afraid to hit me up, because more often than not, I'll go ahead and tool up the parts in question. And this here is another example of that. What we have here is the 1/6 scale Schwimmwagen AA MG mount set. This set here was specifically designed for the Dragon Schwimmwagen, but obviously could be used on basically any other 1/6 scale Schwimmwagen counterpart. I wouldn't also be surprised if the same exact set can work on a number of other German World War II vehicles, such as the Kubelwagen comes to mind. Regardless, what we have here are a set that is offered in a multitude of different options with different pricing options available, as well as different media options available. So what we have here is basically the top of the line one. We have here the metal 3D printed MG mount set. And this is the dual set, because on the Schwimmwagen there actually has provisions of mounting two MG34s to the vehicle. One gets mounted on the passenger side, and the other one actually gets mounted on the rear passenger side as well. The set that we have here, like I referenced before, is made out of metal 3D print, or I should say the most important parts are metal. The stem that we have here is standard white nylon. As for the purpose at hand, the standard nylon one should work perfectly fine. However, where the parts become very interesting are with the actual pintle mounts themselves. So here we have the mount for the MG34 and also for the 42, but with the way the yoke is, this is actually for the 34 specifically. So the 34 mount was very different compared to the ones found on the American Brownings. So it's obviously much simpler. I know that's actually something that you don't really hear very often, German and simple. So that's, that's just how it worked on this one. Regardless, the German mounts are made in the following format. So we have here just a stamped sheet metal mounting system and a mounting stem that is welded in place. That's essentially all there is to it. The piece was directly referenced off of a real example that I had some access to, so I was able to carefully take some excellent measurements, and I was able to translate those into 1/6 scale. And basically what you see here is the one that I had as reference. Note this one here does have several holes that are punched into it on the sides. It's also on the bottom. And we have a unique feature is that the piece is asymmetrical with the cutout right over here. This is as per the real unit. For the mounting pintle itself, this is welded in place, and you can see that the welds are integrally printed on, and they are in this dual ring format, again as per the real unit. We have here on the bottom stem section the lock mechanisms. There's like a little tab on this side, and there's a small fastener on the reverse side. The stem is printed hollow, so no drilling is required on this. Basically ready for installation out of the box. And we also have the mounting fasteners over here for the actual part that secures onto the MG34. The way the MG34 is, there are these two recesses that are cut into the barrel shroud, and those are for mounting on accessories. Normally you'd see the bipod mounted on this section on the front, but in the mid section there is another ring for either moving the bipod to that section, having the bipod closer to the receiver, or you could use it for a multitude of other accessories, one of which is a carry handle, which is pretty cool, but for the purposes of this video, it's for locking on to a vehicle mount. So without any sort of tools, just clip and rotate the piece in place and it drops in. This piece here is the exact same CAD file from the ECA King Tiger AA mount that I referenced in a number of videos ago. The only difference is that it's made out of metal this time instead of nylon plastic. Piece has the cutout right here in the center portion as per the real unit. And as I referenced before, these pieces are intended for use on the Dragon MG34 sets, as in my opinion, the Dragon ones are the best options out there in 1/6 scale. And they are fairly prolific. They're not too hard to track down. But having said that, I'm pretty sure this system could be adapted to any sort of other MG34 that's on the market. So the set, as I referenced before, contains 2 of these metal mounts, as well as the stem. The stem is for, again, the passenger side. This has all of the appropriate detailing that I was able to lift off of a real example that I was able to find as reference. It has the mounting collar right over here with that little hole in it. It's a little tricky to see on camera, but the piece is intended to secure in place, and it's a friction fit. As you can see, fresh from the printer, it's a bit on the snug side, which is kind of what you want. If you're receiving one of these pieces, you know, taking a X-Acto knife and just going up and down these surfaces over here should be able to smooth it out to the point where the piece can fit on a little bit easier, but I'll leave that for the builder. One thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to hit this with sandpaper. This material just does not sand. It is abrasive resistant. So if you're going to try to sand it down with some sandpaper, you're going to be doing that for a long time because it just doesn't sand. It's incredible material, which is why it's used for lots of cool things. But regardless, an X-Acto knife up and down the surfaces will yield better results than using sandpaper. And just like 1 or 2 swipes of a blade is really all that needs. You don't want to carve into it like, you're trying to cut an apple or anything. Just lightly go over the surfaces, a few times, and the piece will eventually loosen up so that this thing can fit in its proper place. But again, you want snug. The snugger, the better. If the part's too loose, it doesn't really help you. Regardless, this set here is, again, the full set where you get 2 of these units. Now, as I referenced before, they are offered in a multitude of different configurations with the type of materials that these are made in. So these are the metal ones. I also have the same exact set in HD 3D print, and I also have it in standard white nylon. All of the prices are reflective of that. My opinion, this is really best in metal and in the nylon, simply because of the thinnesses over here. If these were the resin ones, in my opinion, they may be a little bit on the thin and frail side. So that's definitely something to consider. You maybe just want to save your pennies, a few more pennies more, and just opt for the metal one as opposed to rolling with the resin one. But, it's out there on the market in case anyone, thinks it's good for them. Also, the piece is offered in different options in terms of numbers available. So this is the full set. We also have a set where it's just the sections over here, and they're also sold individually. So again, lots of options available to the customer. As for the stem, swinging back to that, you'll see that there are a few other bits of equipment on the table. So first, it contains 2 lengths of metal wire. These are used to achieve the hinging effect for the MG. You can actually just drill right through the MG34 if desired and just put the whole pin directly through, locking it in place if that's something that would appeal to your sensibilities, specifically if this thing is radio controlled and you really want it mounted firmly in place. That's one way to do it. Or you just carefully cut the pieces to the appropriate lengths and glue them each side so the piece can pivot, and then you can just mount the MG34 accordingly. So again, more options available. As for these 2 pieces over here, we have a little length of aluminum as well as a metal nail. On the bottom portion here, you'll see that it is printed with this little hole present, and on the real Schwimmwagen, there is a mounting bracket that comes out and just bends and secures to the side, the inner section of the floorboard, not really the floorboard, more like the sidewall of the vehicle on the passenger side. This is something that I really can't design in CAD just because of the wacky curvatures of the vehicle, and also depending if it's a Dragon or a 21st Century or any other option available, the curvature is going to be different. And then on top of that, the piece needs to slide in from the top. You can't really do that when you have a bracket mounted in place. So for this application, it's best just to give you a piece of aluminum and a nail, and basically you just hand fit it to the vehicle, and then you just mount it all together, creating the unit, in its complete form. That you actually kind of need the bracket on the bottom because it will give extra strength and support to the system. So that is something definitely to consider. Regardless, we have the entire set right here for you to choose from. As for where these are listed on the ECA catalog, well, these are listed on the Schwimmwagen catalog page, link listed below in the video description, and that is a page that I have not updated in quite some time, just because I really haven't built a Schwimmwagen in quite some time. But regardless, I do have a limited number of items for the Schwimmwagen, and they are all listed on that catalog page. Again, link in the description. Another component that's been on the catalog now for a little while, but this is the first time that I've got it on screen specifically in this format, is the T23 Sherman turret rear 50 cal storage rack set. This is something that I've glanced upon in a few other videos because I have had sets similar to this, but those were for other types of tanks. Namely, I believe the one was for the M26 Pershing specifically. Well, like I stated there, I also produced them for both the 75mm Sherman turret and, as what we have over here, for the 76mm Sherman turret. The sets are both offered in two types of formats. We have the version that is made with HD material parts, and we have this particular variant here, which is a very recent addition to the catalog, which utilizes 3D printed metal components in lieu of the HD 3D print ones. These parts here are intended for use on any of the 1/6 scale T23 turreted Shermans on the market, be it from the older school ones that were produced in the Philippines by Mardun Calanta, or the more recent edition from Armortech. Regardless, this unit here is basically a set that's designed for all of those vehicles. So just like with the M26, we have the use of two types of materials. For the main rails themselves, we utilize the SLS white nylon material. It's very durable, and it also has some nice surface texturing on it. But for the more frailer detail components, we have them made in 3D printed metal. The other set utilize the exact same components, but they are made in 3D print resin material as opposed to the metal. The resin sets are a little bit more affordable, but they are a bit more frail compared to the metal counterparts. Basically, this one here is more or less targeted for individuals who are RCing their vehicles, so namely like if you have the Armortech, for instance, and for that type of a set, I would strongly recommend the metal set as opposed to the rest one because, again, of the metal's durability. Regardless, both the resin and the metal ones utilize the exact same CAD file, so the detail on both are going to be identical. So starting from the right and working our way to the left takes us to the rails. Note the rails have their different geometries to them, which is something that is noteworthy to point out. This one rail here is an iconic bit of detailing found on the T23 turret, and a common mistake, even in several video games out there, is they basically mirror this on the reverse side, and that's just not the case. Only this one bracket here is longer, and there's a reason for that I'll mention momentarily. The other thing to notice is that this one here, it's shorter, but it's much fatter compared to the other counterpart. And this has to do with the design of the clips. With the way the clips are intended, you see that there are these indication points right over here, and the clips just simply plug into those two locations. The reason why we need the extra length over here is that this clears the barrel section of the M2 when it clips into place. Much along the lines of what was mentioned in the M26 and the M46 rack video. The extra length and also this distinctive cut that we have right over here, that's due to this other suggestion point that we have right over here, and that's for the barrel clamp. Once everything is secured in place, with the way the T23 turret is, there's that cool blower on the back, and the rear travel pintle is in that cool angle, and because of that, you need this extra length over here just so this system can reach over and clamp onto the receiver section of the M2. Just like with the other sets, they are correct with their geometry. Note they have the appropriate curvature on both the inside and the out. These are not a perfectly square type production. They have the curvature found on the inside, and this is something that was translated over into the ECA example. Same is also true for the little curvature that we have right over here. Just like with the other sets, these are intended to be hand-fitted to the vehicle, so you can either carve, or I should say cut into the turret itself in order to make a slot so these things can fit in appropriately, or you can remove the material on these sections here and glue them on in that type of format. Regardless, that's best left up to the discretion of the builder. It is because of this why we do not have weld beads present on the printing. This is something that's still going to have to be sculpted by the builder. However, this is still going to save a bunch of time as opposed to just scratch building everything from the get-go. For the other equipment, we'll start with the barrel clamps. These are, again, the same exact file that was mentioned in the other video, and it's basically the exact same part, and again, printed in brass. They have the appropriate detailing on them, which would be the support bracket, the rabbit ear clamps, as well as also the rivet detailing is all present. On the clamp, the receiver clamp itself, this is distinctive for the T23 turret and looks very different compared to the one found on the standard Sherman with the 75 and also the other vehicles like the M36 or even the M46 or the M26 Pershing. Regardless, it still works the exact same way. So, like I said before, it's all metal. All of the appropriate geometry and details are present. We have some weld beads right over here. And we have the cutout for the Jeep hood style latch system. Again, all of the details are properly rendered on. We have here the pin for the hinge section. Everything, of course, is drilled out, including that one right there that I'll touch upon in a second. And on the latch itself, it has the two cutouts over here, again, so that this piece could snap on in place. For the actual pivoting of this section over here, that's facilitated with these two bits of equipment. We have here a metal eyelet. It's purposely left a bit long so that this needs to be hand adjusted by the builder. You know, it doesn't take too much work to do that. Of course, the piece is already integrally printed hollow, so the piece can simply just drop right in like you can see right over there. And the wire brad over here, it's used to just lock the eyelet into place and securing it so it could hinge freely in that manner. Component that is a very recent addition to the ECA catalog, but this is the first time I was actually able to get a production unit in hand. What we have here is the 1/6 scale King Tiger rear grillwork grenade mesh system. For anyone who follows the other videos, namely the Armortech King Tiger video series that I recently finished, in that series I went ahead and developed these parts here. However, those ones were a pre-production sample and the materials were different and also some of the detailing. After those sets were designed, I was able to find some better photographs and reference material, and I was able to translate those into the units that we have here, and these here are the actual production units. These parts here are listed on the ECA King Tiger catalog page, and they could be found in the video link listed below in the description. So what we have here are two parts that are containing in this set. We have here the 3D printed grills, or the grill frames themselves, and we also have quite a bit of mesh. So the mesh is just aluminum varmint mesh. This is the same material that I use on my own builds, and this is what comes with the sets, or why it's on the table right now. So let me just go ahead and get that out of the way and go to the actual frames themselves. So the frames are all made out of the SLS nylon material, and you'll see that the set is all-encompassing, where we have the 4 box grills as well as the 2 fan grills. For the box grills, they have all of the appropriate geometry as well as the folded over detailing, which would be found on the actual units. Note the geometry on the curvature of these sections over here. These were again taken off of a real example that I was fortunate to have some good reference on. As well as the folds. The folds also represent the metal being bent and folded over, so you have that nice radius bend section that is present on the real unit. The ways, or I should say, the way these gets fitted to the vehicle is you utilize the grill mounting fasteners. So you recycle those and you basically just install them and you sandwich these on top of the grill work that are found on those kits. Although this is specifically designed for the Armortech, this will most likely work for just about any other 1/6 scale King Tiger that's on the market, either from another manufacturer or one that you're possibly scratch building. Regardless, these grills here should be able to do the job just fine. With the way the pieces are designed is you actually take the mesh work and you put on top of the grill, you then sandwich the frame on top of that via those fasteners, and once bolted on, it holds everything in place. Again, same thing along the lines of the real one. For the fan grills, these are just wrought iron that the mesh work is literally just wrapped around, and then the whole thing would be then welded or tack welded to the grill housing itself. In the King Tiger video, I actually show the procedure and how I pinch and get everything fitted in place, and I recommend checking that out in case you're curious on how exactly does one go ahead and fit the mesh work to one of these cylindrical wrought iron type setups. Another thing to mention on the frames themselves, that we have even little spacer washers that are present. Again, all of these are found on the actual units. And while on the topic of older catalog items that are finally being brought to table, here we have 2 examples of the post-World War II US AFV instrument panel accessory set. What's interesting to point out was that in the previous new product announcement video, I mentioned the M151 mutt pattern of dashboard, or I should say instrument panel, and I also mentioned that there are different options available where you could get that unit as just a standalone unit, which is what that variant was, but there were also versions that came with the other accessories. Well, here go the other accessories. And just like with the instrument panel itself, the accessories are also offered as a individual separate part in case you just want to upgrade any sort of dash on one of these type of vehicles of one flavor or another. So the components all contain the sets that we have here. They are integrally 3D printed. These are HD 3D printed. And one thing I also want to mention is that my 3D printer switched materials. So in the past, the HD 3D printed parts were that translucent material. And since then, they went with this opaque yellow material, and kind of reminds me of the old cast resin parts from back in the 90s. Kind of smells like it too when you cut it. But regardless, you get to see the quality of the parts in hand. The CAD files are identical to the ones that I mentioned before, so here you actually get to see what the units look like IRL. So we have the starter over here, as well as with the other two switches. I believe those are for the lights, if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, they are all rendered down to the appropriate detailing. We've had the little notches that are molded into the base section. We have the slot-headed dome fasteners right there, just slot screws. On this device over here, we also have the little ribs that are found on the toggle switch itself. Also, when I hold the unit this way, you can see that the pieces are actually standing above the unit, as they would on the actual real counterpart, and that's a very nice bit of detailing, one that can't really do in cast resin all that easily. Here you can see the other switches, note the geometry found on the components. As you see, everything is basically ready to go for installation as soon as you take the parts out of the parts bag. Again, these components here are listed on the ECA M151 mutt catalog page, as well as also on the soft skin detail accessory page as well. Both of those links are again found in the video description below. Carrying on takes us to another set that has had a slight upgrade to it, and this is the ECA US AFV 3D printed periscope brush guard. These have been on the catalog now literally since I first started ECA, or I should say not in this format. Originally they were made out of brass bar stock that would hand bend to shape, solder them together, and they were offered in that condition for a number of years, over 10 to be specific, but in recent years I went ahead and retired that set for a unit in 3D print. These were mentioned in more depth in a previous new product announcement video, but here we can see another option that's offered on the catalog. The units are offered in a 3D printed format. You get them in metal 3D print, you get them in resin 3D print, or you get them in standard white nylon 3D print. The unit here is actually the same exact CAD file that went into the upgraded metal ones that I referenced earlier, only here you can see it's produced in the other type of material. These ones here are a lower cost alternative to the metal and the resin ones, and because they are made out of nylon, they are much more durable compared to the HD 3D print resin ones. These ones here I'd recommend if anyone is, utilizing their models where they're constantly, using them for figure display, or if you're also using them for radio controlled, something that's a bit more forgiving of a material like this is probably going to be a better and wiser choice compared to the resin counterpart. Regardless, here you get to see the part. It's again made with the exact same CAD file, so we have the appropriate geometry. It's the appropriate scale, and on top of that, we also have a slightly new addition, because these weren't found on the earlier rendition sets, where we have now these mounting pegs. You could either drill the 4 small holes into the vehicle or into the hatch in question, drop this in place, or if you feel so inclined, you simply just amputate them with a clean cut snip and call it a day. Regardless, these are how the pieces are going to be offered on the ECA catalog from this point onward. And here we have a product that's far from being new, but I might as well take the opportunity to highlight it, bring it to you on video, because, well, why not? What we have here are the 1/6 scale ECA King Tiger cast metal bump stop set. These products have been on the catalog now for a number of years, but, since I had a set on hand, before I go ahead and package up to the customer, I might as well go ahead and filament for you all to enjoy. These items have been released for a number of years now and are actually offered in two type of variants. We have the cast resin version, and this is the cast metal counterpart. The cast resin one is much more affordable compared to this one over here. However, that one is intended for use on static display models. This one over here, the purpose of being made out of cast metal is so that it stands a better chance for holding up to RC use. Both the cast resin and the cast metal units utilize the exact same master, as well as they also share similar parts, so external appearance-wise they will look identical. The major difference between the two is that first, the cast metal ones come pre-assembled like you see over here, while the cast resin ones are an unassembled kit, and also the cast metal ones differ from the resin ones just with the material of the housing. The housing on this one here, as you can see, is made out of cast metal, while the housing on the other one is just made out of cast resin. The remaining of the components, namely the retention section here, is the same exact cast resin part, and the bump stop here is also a cast rubber part. These components here are intended for use on the Armortech King Tiger and replace the kit one which is supplied. The kit one's made out of a piece of CNC aluminum, and it's unceremoniously very simplistic. This one here just replaces that unit with recycling most of the fastener holes that are found on that section. I do have a King Tiger build video where I show the installation of these components in more depth. Regardless, with the way the set is designed, these aren't necessarily made to get constantly impacted by the bump stops. In fact, if you properly assemble the suspension on a German King Tiger, the swing arm should almost never make contact with this section over here. This is more or less just an emergency type component, or at least that's what's intended to be used as. The purpose of being made out of metal is not necessarily from being impacted by the swing arm, but it's to protect it and make it more robust from the dirt and debris that's drug up by the tracks when the model's in operation, as that is far more likely to happen compared to getting pounded by the swing arm in use. The very last thing I want to mention, it's also one of the interesting trivia pieces about these sets here, is that unlike the other metal components on the ECA catalog that are made out of 3D print, these ones over here are some of the very few cast metal components that are found on the catalog that are done in-house. So I actually melt my own metal, I cast my own metal, and then I go through the various stages of machining to assemble the units to the way we see them here. And with that, that wraps up this new product announcement video for the various new 1/6 scale ECA German and US AFV components. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to this channel, where it's a great way to keep up to date on new posted content, being new product announcements videos like this one here, or the other smaller and larger scale content that gets posted on this channel very regularly. Another way to keep in loop of new posted content is by liking us on Facebook. There I have more photographs of all of the models that are found on this channel, as well as also whenever I develop a new detail component, I always post it on Facebook first prior to making the videos that you see here. Furthermore, don't forget to swing by eastcoastarmory.com for all of the 1/6 scale detail parts that were mentioned in this video, as well as the other smaller and larger scale builds that have been seen here in the past. Thanks again. I'll be seeing you all again on the next one. Take care.